Now, the European Parliament has approved a law preventing the import of goods that are directly linked to the destruction of forests. This means if any product is produced as a result of the destruction of a forest, it will not be allowed in the European Union. And this is the first such law to avowedly strive to end the importing products of deforestation. Now, according to the report, deforestation accounts for 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. This EU law's aim is to check global deforestation. As per this, companies will produce a due diligence statement. They also have to provide verifiable information proving their goods were not grown on land deforested after 2020. This means that imports that come from land that was deforested after December 31st, 2020 will be prohibited. The ban also applies to soy, beef, palm oil, wood, cocoa, coffee, rubber, charcoal and their derivatives like leather, chocolate and furniture. Environmental groups hailed the decision but said that more needs to be done in this regard. An EU forest campaigner at the NGO Global Witness said that it needs to the final piece of the puzzle. The EU must now deliver a new law that would stop banks from funding deforestation. The law is facing pushback from nations which would be affected the most by this. Indonesia and Malaysia are the world's largest palm oil exporters. They've accused the EU of blocking market access for their palm oil. As a response to the law, Malaysia said that it could stop exporting to the EU. Small players too say that they simply cannot comply with its requirements to prove where the goods were produced using precise geolocation data. The EU said that it will carry out compliance checks to enforce the rules. Those failing to comply would be fined up to 4% of a company's turnover in an EU member state once the law is approved by EU countries. Large companies will have 18 months to comply and smaller firms will be given about 24 months for the same. For more on this, we're now joined by James Jackson, a climate reporter and political analyst from Berlin. Thank you so much for joining us. How effective do you think such a law would prove to be, and what can you tell us of the checks and measures that would need to be brought in for the same? I hope you can hear me, sir. My question to you was, how effective do you think such a law would prove to be, and what sort of checks and measures do you think will need to be introduced for the same?
Hi there. I think this law is it's a step in the right direction because the EU has quite a significant market power in the world because it's a number of nations, some of them quite small, but together they can decide and have an impact on global trade and on the environment. It's going to be hard to implement. There's no question about that because deforestation is a massive challenge. The EU has recognised that and they've decided that they're going to take a necessary step to try and use their market power to stop that. But the actual details of how much they'll need, how much information they'll need about deforestation is it's going to be tricky to see how they implement that, particularly in places that are less economically and technologically developed, such as Malaysia, which has threatened to ban palm oil imports in response.
Right, absolutely. On that note, also just for more clarity on this, small players do say that they simply cannot comply with the requirements to prove where the goods were produced using precise geolocation data. Now, that could be complicated for some small producers. What's your take on this?
It absolutely could be complicated, but I think because the EU is such a big market, what we'll see is that it's not like every palm oil farmer in Indonesia will need to become a smartphone specialist and download an app or something. They will develop, because of the market forces involved, because of the money to be made effectively, they will develop people who could do that for them. So maybe Malaysia's government will invest in that. I think that's what the EU is hoping for, or some kind of private sector or intra-government private sector collaboration. So, no one likes to be given new regulations. it does increase the cost of doing business. But once you have them, and once you realise, okay, so I might lose a third of my income if I don't do this, it does become necessary, and you realise that it's worth doing. So the EU is taking advantage of as I said, of its market power, and I think this is a good step. This is a positive step that will drive forward innovation as well as stopping deforestation.
All right, so now environmental campaigners say that the final move to solidify this move would be to deliver another law that prevents banks from funding deforestation. Now, how feasible do you think that is?
I think that would be a bit of a tougher one. I think this is a good first step, and the EU can look later down the line at what they want to do after that, because you have to know where deforestation is coming from first, and which products are going to be giving you problems, and which countries as well. So after this, I think the EU could look at that, but I think we should be looking at what we have right now, and maybe down the line, yeah, sure, if we need to improve it, then absolutely.
All right, Mr. James Jackson, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with your insights on this.